What if everything you believed about your own family was suddenly ripped apart in one sentence? Imagine dedicating your entire life to protecting the people you love most, only to hear, in the heat of an argument, that those people may not even be yours. That's the question hovering over Prince Harry tonight. And it's the claim that Meghan Markle allegedly threw like a dagger straight at her husband's heart. You're not the father. Those words, so simple, so devastating, could unravel everything Harry thought he knew about Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana. But before we rush ahead, let's take a breath. Because the story you're about to hear isn't just about one fight between a husband and wife. It's about power. It's about legacy. It's about identity. And if true, it could expose cracks not only in Harry and Meghan's marriage, but in the very foundations of the modern monarchy. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. So let me ask you, how far would you go to find the truth? Would you risk your marriage? Your children? Your reputation in front of the world? Harry might not have a choice anymore. Because once those words left Meghan's lips, there was no way to put them back. Now, here's why this matters right now. Tensions inside the royal orbit are already stretched tighter than ever. The Sussexes' departure from royal duties sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace. Their explosive interviews stirred up global debates. Their Netflix series, their memoirs, their lawsuits, it's been a constant storm. But beneath all the headlines about media feuds and royal drama, something far more personal may have been bubbling. Something so intimate, so volatile, that it could shatter everything Harry has built since stepping away from the crown. And that's where our story begins. Not in the grand halls of a palace, not in the glittering glow of Hollywood, but in the shadows of a marriage strained by pressure, mistrust, and whispered doubts. Picture the scene. A warm California night. The quiet hum of crickets outside their Montecito estate. Inside, voices rise. Meghan's, sharp and cutting. Harry's, raw and wounded. Staff nearby exchange worried glances. This isn't the first fight, but it feels different. And then, the sentence. Meghan hurls it like a thunderbolt. You're not the father of Archie. You're not the father of Lilibet. Let that sink in. We've all seen arguments escalate. Words meant to hurt, thrown out in anger. But this isn't just a cruel insult. It's an allegation that, if true, could change the line of succession. It could redefine Harry's entire sense of identity. And even if it isn't true, even if it was just said in fury, the damage is done. Because once that seed of doubt is planted, how can you ever unhear it? You can almost imagine Harry's face at that moment. Eyes wide, stunned into silence. His chest tightening as his mind races. Did she mean it? Was it just rage? Or was she telling the truth? Now, here's the twist. This isn't the first time rumors like this have floated in the background. Since Archie's birth, there have been questions, odd silences, missing details. Lilibet's arrival brought even more speculation, with unanswered questions about godparents, hospital secrecy, and a veil of mystery surrounding the circumstances. The press dismissed it as gossip. The palace stayed quiet. But if Meghan herself threw the accusation into Harry's face, maybe the rumors were closer to the truth than anyone wanted to admit. And that's what makes this story so urgent. It's not just about two people arguing behind closed doors. It's about history. Royal history has always been obsessed with bloodlines. Who inherits what? Who belongs where? From Henry VIII's desperate need for a son to Edward VIII giving up his crown for love, questions of legitimacy and paternity have haunted monarchs for centuries. And now, Harry, the so-called spare, may be facing his own personal version of that same nightmare. Let's pause here, because I know what you're thinking. Did Meghan really mean it? Was this a calculated confession? A slip of truth? Or was it nothing more than a cruel jab in the heat of a fight? We don't have that answer yet. But what we do have are patterns. Patterns of secrecy, contradictions in the record, and decisions that never quite added up. And as we pull at those threads, you'll see how this story grows darker, stranger, and more explosive with every turn. So here's the promise. Over the next hour, we're not just going to recount one argument. We're going to peel back the layers of this mystery. We'll examine the fight. We'll dive into Harry's history of trauma and betrayal. We'll explore Meghan's motives and the strange decisions surrounding the children's births. We'll ask the questions the press hasn't dared to ask out loud. And by the end, you'll see why this moment, The night Meghan told Harry he wasn't the father. Maybe the most consequential in their entire saga. Still with me? Good. Because the deeper we go, the harder it will be to look away. Think about Harry's position for a moment. He has spent his entire life fighting against the perception that he doesn't belong. Remember the cruel whispers in the tabloids that he was James Hewitt's son, not Charles's? Those headlines haunted him for years. He's lived his whole life under suspicion. And now, decades later, that same wound may have been ripped open again, this time by the woman he trusted most. Do you see the irony? The cruel twist of fate? The very man mocked as illegitimate may now face accusations of raising children who aren't his own. This isn't just gossip, it's Shakespearean tragedy. A man trapped in an endless cycle of betrayal, identity, and doubt. And here's the part no one's talking about. If Harry actually questions the paternity of his children, it doesn't just affect his marriage. It affects the monarchy. Archie and Lilibet are in the royal line of succession. If they aren't biologically Harry's, then what? Legally, technically, they're still in the line, because Meghan is their mother. But symbolically, for a monarchy obsessed with pure bloodlines, the scandal would be catastrophic. It could fuel Republican movements around the world. It could destroy what little goodwill Harry and Meghan have left in the UK. And it could leave Harry utterly broken, caught between his love for the children he's raised and the possibility they aren't his by blood. Let me ask you again, what would you do? If someone told you the children you've tucked in at night, the ones who call you daddy, weren't yours, would you believe it? Would you demand proof? Or would you bury it, pretend you never heard it, just to protect yourself from the pain? Harry can't escape that choice. Not anymore. And this brings us back to the night of the fight. The moment when Meghan's words sliced through him like glass. He stares. She doesn't take it back. The silence stretches. And then, voices outside the room. Staff pretending not to hear, but they hear everything. A storm has broken inside those walls, and whether Meghan meant it or not, nothing will ever be the same again. Because here's the truth. Once doubt enters a marriage, it spreads like poison. And in this case, that poison has the power to kill not just a relationship, but reputations, legacies, and maybe even the monarchy itself. But before we can understand the full weight of Meghan's claim, we need to rewind. We need to go back into Harry's past, into the childhood wounds that shaped him, into the betrayals that scarred him. Because only then will you see why those words, "You're not the father," hit him harder than any punch, harder than any insult. They hit him in the one place he's always been most vulnerable, his very sense of self. And that's where our journey takes us next. Because if you think this fight was explosive, wait until you see how Harry's lifelong fear of betrayal came roaring back to life in that single moment. Have you ever been in a fight so intense that when the words were spoken, you knew, even before the dust settled, that nothing would ever go back to the way it was? That's the kind of fight we're stepping into now. This wasn't a squabble over dishes or a disagreement about schedules. This was the kind of clash where truths, lies, and secrets all blur together until you can't tell what's real anymore. So let me ask you, what happens when the woman you love most in the world looks you in the eye and tells you your children aren't really yours? The night it happened started deceptively ordinary. Their Montecito mansion, shrouded in Californian calm, hid a storm building behind its walls. The kids were asleep. Staff tiptoed around, careful not to intrude. Harry had been brooding all evening, wrestling with frustrations about family, the press, and the growing chasm between him and his brother. Meghan, already tense from juggling her media projects, was tired of Harry's short fuse. It began with small jabs. Harry accused Meghan of being too focused on appearances. Meghan shot back that Harry was still obsessed with pleasing a family that rejected him. Words bounced back and forth like darts aimed at open wounds. But then, something shifted. Meghan's voice grew sharper. She leaned in, eyes blazing, and spat the line that would cut deeper than anything Harry had ever heard. "You're not the father of Archie. You're not the father of Lilibet." Silence. Thick. Suffocating. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant barking of a neighbor's dog. Harry froze, stunned, as if lightning had just struck him where he stood. And here's the thing, Meghan didn't backtrack. She didn't laugh it off as a cruel joke. She let it hang in the air, heavy and poisonous. Now let's pause. Because fights often push people to say things they don't mean. But this wasn't just an insult. This was a declaration that could shatter a man's soul. If Harry believed even for 1 second that she meant it, then his entire world, his children, his marriage, his legacy, was suddenly teetering on the edge of collapse. So why would Meghan say it? Was it rage? Was it manipulation? Or was it, as some whispers suggest, a raw slice of truth slipped out in anger? Harry's reaction was visceral. His jaw clenched, his face flushed, his fists trembled at his sides, not in violence, but in disbelief, in the unbearable need to hold himself together when his insides were tearing apart. Think about this. Harry's entire adult life has been built on proving himself as a husband and father. Leaving the royal family? He said it was for Meghan and the kids. Battling the tabloids? He claimed it was for Archie and Lilibet's safety. Every move, every stand, every war he's fought has been framed as the act of a devoted father protecting his children. And now, the very foundation of that devotion was being questioned. He stumbled back, muttering, "What did you just say?" His voice was hoarse, almost pleading. Meghan's expression didn't soften. If anything, her silence pressed the knife in deeper. Let's step into Harry's mind for a moment. This is a man who has already been tormented by whispers about his own parentage. The cruel speculation that he was the son of James Hewitt, not Charles, followed him for decades. Imagine the echo in his brain now. History repeating itself. First him, now his kids. Could fate be that cruel? Or was it Meghan weaponizing his deepest wound against him? Here's the contradiction. Harry loves Meghan. Fiercely, obsessively, some would argue. She has been his escape, his reason to break free from the monarchy. But love makes betrayal cut sharper. Because when it comes from a stranger, you can shrug it off. When it comes from the person you trust most, it destroys you. And that night, Harry felt destroyed. He paced the room, running his hands through his hair, muttering to himself. He wanted to scream, but the children were asleep. He wanted to demand answers, but the lump in his throat stopped him. Meghan finally spoke again, her voice colder this time. Do you really think everything is as perfect as you imagine? You don't know half of it, Harry. Think about that line. You don't know half of it. What did she mean? Was she hinting at secrets? Cover-ups? Affairs? Or was she deliberately sowing confusion, knowing exactly which buttons to push to break him down? The staff downstairs pretended not to hear, but they couldn't ignore the tension. They described footsteps stomping across the floor, a door slamming, muffled cries. One source later admitted, it wasn't just a fight. It was the kind of argument that makes you wonder if they'll ever recover. Here's where the emotional twist comes in. Harry wasn't just angry. He was terrified. Terrified of losing Meghan. Terrified of losing his children. Terrified of losing himself. Because if Meghan's words were true, then who was he anymore? A husband? A father? Or just a man living a lie? And here's the cruel irony. Meghan had once been his refuge from the lies of the palace. Now, she was the one planting the biggest lie of all. Let me ask you, the viewer, what would you do in that moment? Would you demand a DNA test right then and there? Would you pack your bags and leave? Or would you cling to denial, pretending you never heard those words, just to keep the illusion alive? Harry didn't leave that night. He didn't demand a test. He stood there, shaking, his heart pounding in his chest, unable to decide which was worse, believing her or not believing her. And this is where things get darker. Because once doubt creeps in, it doesn't go away. It lingers. It festers. It grows louder every time you look into your child's eyes and wonder, do I see myself in them? Harry couldn't shake it. That night, when he kissed Archie goodnight, when he glanced at Lilibet sleeping peacefully, he couldn't stop his brain from replaying Meghan's words. Again and again. Like a curse. This fight wasn't just an explosion. It was a fracture. A crack in the glass of their marriage that could never truly be repaired. And whether Meghan meant it or not, whether it was truth or manipulation, Harry was trapped in the aftermath. Because here's the reality. Sometimes it's not the words themselves that destroy you. It's the doubt they leave behind. And for Harry, that doubt was unbearable. The night ended in silence. Meghan retreated upstairs. Harry sat alone, staring at the floor, his mind racing with 1,000 possibilities. Every memory, every smile, every photo with his children now carried a question mark. And just when he thought he couldn't take any more, Meghan returned to the room, her face unreadable, and whispered something else. something that made Harry's blood run cold. "You're more like your mother than you realize." What did she mean? Was it a dig at Diana's tragic life? Was it an acknowledgement of Harry's fear of betrayal? Or was it something darker? An insinuation that secrets about Diana still haunt the family? Whatever she meant, Harry knew one thing. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a battle for his identity, his children, and his sanity. And that's where the story twists even further. Because what Harry heard next, what Meghan said about Diana's legacy, would send him spiraling into memories he had spent his entire life trying to bury. Do you ever wonder why some words cut deeper than others? Why certain insults slide off our backs, while others pierce straight into the soul? For Prince Harry, the reason Meghan's accusation hit like a thunderbolt lies buried in the darkest corners of his past. So here's the question we have to ask. Was Harry already primed for this exact betrayal? Let's go back. Long before Meghan, long before Archie or Lilibet, long before Montecito and Netflix and podcasts, Harry was just a little boy standing beside his mother's coffin. A boy who learned, in the most brutal way imaginable, that the people you love can be ripped from you in an instant. Princess Diana's death wasn't just the loss of a mother. It was the spark that lit a lifelong fear inside Harry. A fear of abandonment. A fear of betrayal. A fear that no matter how much he gave, how much he loved, it would never be enough to keep someone by his side. Think about that funeral for a moment. Two young boys, William and Harry, forced to walk behind their mother's coffin while the world watched. Cameras flashing, crowds weeping, millions of strangers grieving, while Harry's own grief was trapped inside his chest. That image, the boy prince with his head bowed, burned itself into history. But for Harry, it wasn't history. It was trauma. Trauma that never left him. And here's the twist. That trauma shaped every decision he's made since. His reckless partying, his desperate search for love, his obsession with protecting his family from the media, his decision to walk away from the monarchy. It all comes back to that childhood wound. Now, add this layer. Even as a child, Harry wasn't safe from whispers. Tabloids hinted that he wasn't really Charles's son. They pointed to James Hewitt, Diana's rumored lover, comparing photos of their red hair, their smiles, their features. Cruel speculation splashed across newspapers for years. Imagine being a teenager and seeing headlines questioning whether your father was your father. Could anything cut deeper? Harry carried that scar into adulthood. He laughed it off in public. He dismissed it as nonsense. But deep down, the wound never healed. Because betrayal, once planted, doesn't vanish. It waits. It festers. And when Meghan hurled those words, "You're not the father," she didn't just hit him with a new fear. She reopened the oldest one. Let's pause here. Imagine being Harry in that moment. You already know what it's like to grow up doubting your own bloodline. You already know the agony of losing the one person you trusted most. And now your wife, the woman you left everything for, throws your deepest insecurity back at you. Do you see why his reaction wasn't just anger? It was devastation. And yet, here's the contradiction. Harry has always seen himself as the protector, the one who shields Meghan and the children from harm, the soldier, the defender, the man carrying his mother's torch. But how do you protect your family if you're not even sure it's yours? That's the psychological torment that began the night of the fight. Harry's friends have spoken about his fear of betrayal before. He's been described as intensely loyal, but also suspicious, always scanning for who he can trust. One insider once said, "Harry gives everything, but if you cross him, you're dead to him forever." Sound familiar? That's the defense mechanism of someone terrified of being hurt again. And Meghan knew that. She knew Harry's wounds. She knew his buttons, which is why her words carried so much weight. She didn't just lash out randomly. She struck at the one place she knew would break him. Now, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Betrayal isn't new in royal history. Kings, queens, princes, they've all been haunted by questions of loyalty, fidelity, legitimacy. Henry VIII destroyed lives chasing heirs. Edward VIII gave up everything for love. Charles and Diana's marriage collapsed under the weight of lies and affairs. And now Harry, Diana's son, finds himself reliving the same cycle. Different century, same wound. Isn't it ironic? The very institution that destroyed his mother's happiness is now mirrored in the cracks of his own marriage. History doesn't just repeat itself. It evolves. wrapping new faces around the same old pain. But let's get personal again. Do you think Harry ever really believed he could escape betrayal? Or was he secretly waiting for it, bracing for the moment it would find him again? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes we recreate the very pain we're running from. Sometimes, without realizing it, we gravitate toward the same wounds we've always carried, hoping we can finally heal them. And maybe that's what Meghan represented to Harry. A chance to rewrite the story, to protect his wife the way Charles didn't protect Diana, to shield his children from the press the way he wasn't shielded, to finally prove he could break the cycle. But when Meghan told him he wasn't the father, the cycle snapped back around. Instead of breaking free, he was right back where he started, doubting his family, doubting himself, and drowning in betrayal. Let me ask you directly. If you had spent your whole life fighting against whispers of illegitimacy, how would you react if those whispers suddenly echoed in your own marriage? Could you survive it? Could you still look at your children the same way? Harry couldn't answer those questions that night. His mind was spinning. His body felt like it was on fire. He wanted to scream, to demand, to know the truth. But instead, he shut down. He retreated into silence, a tactic he'd learned as a boy walking behind that coffin. When pain becomes unbearable, you swallow it. You bury it. You carry it alone. And that's exactly what he did. But here's the thing about silence. It doesn't erase pain. It magnifies it. Every quiet moment becomes a breeding ground for doubts. Every smile from Archie, every laugh from Lilibet became tinged with a question. Do they really belong to me? And Meghan didn't make it easier. She didn't rush to reassure him. She didn't soften the blow. She let the words linger, almost daring him to confront them. Why? Was it cruelty? Was it honesty? Or was it a test, to see how much Harry could endure before he broke? This is where betrayal gets complicated. Sometimes it's not about whether the claim is true or false. Sometimes the damage comes simply from planting the seed. And once the seed is planted, the betrayal has already taken root. Harry's fear of betrayal wasn't born that night. It was reborn. The ghost of Diana's death, the whispers about Hewitt, the years of mistrust with the media, all of it came crashing down in that one moment, with Meghan as the messenger. And here's the cliffhanger. Meghan wasn't done. As Harry sat in silence, drowning in old wounds, she leaned closer and said something that sent chills through his body. You really don't know me at all, do you? What did she mean? Was it a confession? A threat? A warning that more secrets were waiting to be revealed? For Harry, it was the most terrifying sentence of all. Because if he didn't know Meghan, then who had he married? Who was raising his children? And what truths were still hiding in the shadows, waiting to come out? Whose truth do you believe? That's the question at the center of every great scandal. And in this story, it's not enough to see Harry's pain. We also need to step into Meghan's shoes. Because while Harry spiraled into doubt and betrayal, Meghan had her own reasons, her own perspective, and her own version of the truth. So let me ask you, was Meghan's shocking claim that night a revelation or a weapon? To understand Meghan's side, we need to rewind. Meghan Markle didn't grow up in palaces or castles. She wasn't groomed for royal life. She was a Hollywood actress, used to fighting for roles, navigating gossip, and building her image from the ground up. Every room she walked into, she had to prove herself. And when she married Prince Harry, she thought she had finally found her fairy tale. But the fairy tale quickly twisted into a nightmare. Imagine it. The British tabloids dissecting your every move. Strangers questioning your motives. Headlines calling you manipulative, ambitious, calculating. Meghan wasn't just attacked, she was vilified. And the pressure built, day after day. Now think about being married to Harry during all this. Harry, who carried his own baggage, his own paranoia, his own wounds. He wanted to protect Meghan, but he also demanded loyalty, reassurance, constant proof of devotion. Meghan, meanwhile, was balancing a newborn, media harassment, and isolation from her old life. Tension was inevitable. So when she lashed out during that fight, when she said the one line that cut Harry to the core, maybe it wasn't about truth. Maybe it was about survival, about flipping the script, about reminding Harry that he wasn't the only one in the marriage with scars. Because here's the contradiction. Meghan has always preached authenticity. In interviews, she talks about living your truth, about being brave enough to speak up. But in the eyes of critics, she's also mastered the art of spin. Which version is real? The wounded woman crying on camera, or the shrewd strategist who knows how to wield words like weapons? And that's the tightrope Meghan walks. Some insiders claim she meant it literally, that she wasn't bluffing, that she was holding back a devastating secret until the moment it would hurt Harry most. Others say it was pure manipulation, a cruel sentence thrown like a dart, never meant to be believed, just meant to wound. Which is worse, the truth, or the possibility that she'd say it even if it wasn't true? Let me ask you, have you ever said something in anger that you didn't mean, only to watch it destroy the person you love? Now imagine doing that in a marriage already collapsing under global scrutiny. But Meghan's side doesn't stop there. Because after that night, she allegedly defended herself with a very different story. She told Harry that he didn't really understand what it was like for her, that while he was haunted by the past, she was fighting the present. The paparazzi stalking them, the lawsuits, the hate mail, the constant judgment. Meghan, in her mind, wasn't the villain, she was the one under siege. And when someone feels cornered, they lash out. Is it possible that Meghan's words weren't about biology at all? That they were a metaphor, a way of saying, these kids aren't just yours, Harry. They're mine. And you don't control this family the way you think you do. That's one interpretation. But there's another, darker one. Whispers say Meghan had secrets, conversations, friendships, maybe even connections that Harry didn't know about. Late-night calls, meetings off the radar, people she trusted that Harry never met. When she told him, "You're not the father," was she hinting at something real? Or just reminding him that she had power too? This is where the story turns into a psychological chess match. Harry, the soldier, the protector, the man desperate for loyalty. Meghan, the strategist, the survivor, the woman who knows exactly how to exploit a weak spot. Together, they created a marriage built on both passion and pressure. And when pressure collides with passion, the result is fire. Now, here's a surprising fact. Meghan herself once admitted that she has a temper. In private circles, she's known for sharp words and quick anger. Some who worked with her in Hollywood described her as charming but tough. Don't cross her. That toughness helped her climb the ladder. But in a marriage, that same toughness can cut deep. So let's imagine Meghan's thought process that night. Harry's criticisms pile up. His voice grows sharper. His paranoia grows louder. She's exhausted, cornered, angry. She wants to hurt him the way he's hurting her. She scans her mental arsenal. What's the one thing that could silence Harry, make him stop in his tracks? She finds it, and she fires. "You're not the father." It works. Harry collapses into silence. Meghan wins the fight. But at what cost? Here's the emotional twist. Meghan, too, has her own fear of betrayal. She's spoken about it openly. Feeling abandoned by her father. Feeling betrayed by her sister. Feeling abandoned by Hollywood when roles dried up. Maybe in her own way, she projected that fear back onto Harry. Maybe her cruelty came not from power, but from pain. Do you see how complicated this becomes? Two wounded people, each carrying scars from their past, each terrified of being abandoned, each lashing out at the other. The result? A marriage that feels more like a battlefield than a partnership. But Meghan's side doesn't end with anger. After the fight, she allegedly tried to explain herself. She told Harry, "You don't really know me. You think you do, but you don't." A chilling statement. But maybe what she meant was that Harry never fully understood the weight she carried. That while he was haunted by the loss of his mother, she was haunted by being cast as the villain in the world's biggest soap opera. Could it be that Meghan's real frustration wasn't about Harry or the children at all, but about the fact that no matter what she did, the world never believed her truth? Let me ask you directly. If millions of strangers hated you, if the press twisted your every move, wouldn't you eventually snap too? Wouldn't you throw out words designed to hurt, just to claw back some control? But here's where it gets darker. Because Harry didn't just hear Meghan's words that night. He saw her expression. Calm, cold, almost calculated. And that's what haunted him most. Was she speaking the truth? Or was she simply showing him what she was capable of when pushed too far? And the story doesn't stop there. Because days after the fight, Harry reportedly stumbled upon something that deepened his doubts. A message on Meghan's phone. A message from someone Harry didn't recognize. Friendly, intimate, cryptic. Was it innocent? A friend checking in? Or was it something more? Harry didn't confront her right away. But the seed was planted. And that seed would grow into obsession, suspicion, and a desperate need for answers. And that, right there, is the cliffhanger. Because Meghan's side of the story isn't just about words spoken in anger. It's about secrets she may still be hiding. Secrets Harry was only beginning to uncover. What's the first thing most parents want to do after their baby is born? Share the joy. Show the world. Announce every detail, the weight, the time, the name, the photos. But when Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor entered the world in May 2019, something felt off. The details were murky. The timeline didn't add up. The announcement was vague. And the secrecy? It only fueled more questions. So here's the question we have to ask. Why was Archie's birth wrapped in such mystery? Let's rewind to those early days. Meghan was heavily pregnant, and the media frenzy was at a fever pitch. Everyone wanted to know when and where the royal baby would be born. Traditionally, royal births follow a script. Announcements on golden easels outside Buckingham Palace. Crowds of reporters. Hospital steps with the proud parents smiling for cameras. It's part of the ritual, part of the monarchy's carefully curated image. But Meghan and Harry ripped up the script. On May 6, 2019, Buckingham Palace released a statement that Meghan had gone into labor. Just hours later, another statement announced that she had already given birth to a healthy baby boy. Wait, what? How could she have been in labor and given birth almost simultaneously? The timeline made no sense. And then came the photos. 2 days later, Harry and Meghan appeared at Windsor Castle with Archie. Meghan wore a white dress, Harry cradled the baby, and they looked picture-perfect. But here's the catch. There was no public hospital photo. No triumphant moment on the steps of the Lindo wing like William and Kate. No crowd, no transparency. Just carefully managed images. Now let me ask you, if there's nothing to hide, why hide so much? Critics argued that Harry and Meghan were simply trying to protect their privacy. Fair enough. But privacy has never been part of the royal deal. Royals are funded by the public, and the public expects transparency, especially when it comes to the line of succession. By breaking tradition, Harry and Meghan sparked suspicion. And that suspicion only grew when people noticed odd details. For example, Archie's birth certificate. At first, the palace refused to release it. When it finally became public, it showed something curious. Meghan's name had been changed. Originally listed as Rachel Meghan, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex, it was later altered to simply Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Why? The palace said it was in line with tradition. Meghan called it an order from above. Either way, it added another layer of mystery. But the strangest part? No one really knows where Archie was born. Officially, it was reported that Meghan delivered at Portland Hospital in London. But some insiders claim she wanted a home birth at Frogmore Cottage. Others insist she was rushed to the hospital in secrecy. The press was kept in the dark, and conflicting reports only fueled the rumors. And rumors are dangerous things, especially in royal history. Because here's the shocking twist. Some conspiracy theories began suggesting Archie wasn't Meghan's biological child at all. Wild claims of surrogacy circulated online, fueled by Meghan's unusual secrecy about her pregnancy. She rarely revealed details. Her baby bump seemed to change shape in photos. At one point, critics pointed to a clip where her bump appeared to fold as she bent down. Was it just fabric? Or was it proof of something else? The theories spread like wildfire. Now, let's be clear, there's no solid evidence to support those claims. But in the absence of transparency, speculation thrives. And when Meghan and Harry refused to play by the traditional royal rules, they created the perfect breeding ground for doubt. Harry, of course, dismissed all of this as nonsense. He was glowing with pride when he announced Archie's birth. Remember his words? It's been the most amazing experience I could ever have possibly imagined. He was the picture of a proud father. But now, after Meghan's words in that late-night fight, "You're not the father," suddenly those old questions come rushing back. What if the secrecy wasn't just about privacy? What if it was about hiding something bigger? Let me paint the picture again. Meghan and Harry smiling in Windsor Castle. Archie wrapped in a white blanket. Meghan's words carefully chosen. "It's magic. It's pretty amazing. I have the two best guys in the world." Sweet, simple. But think about it. Did she avoid saying too much because she was exhausted? Or because she was guarding a secret? Here's another contradiction. Meghan has always said she values authenticity. Yet when it came to Archie's birth, everything felt staged, polished, controlled. No rawness, no spontaneity, just perfect photos and vague sound bites. That's not authenticity, that's performance. And performance always leaves the audience asking what's real and what isn't. And Harry? He was caught between two worlds. On one hand, he wanted to protect Meghan's privacy at all costs. On the other, he knew the public expected honesty. By choosing Meghan's side, he alienated the press, the public, and even parts of his own family. Was it worth it? At the time, yes. But now? After Meghan's claim that he wasn't the father? That choice might haunt him forever. Here's the emotional twist. Archie's birth should have been the happiest moment of Harry's life. But instead, it became the start of endless speculation, secrecy, and mistrust. And those shadows only grew darker with time. Imagine Harry holding his newborn son, feeling the rush of love, but deep down knowing the world doubted him. Knowing the whispers about Hewitt still lingered. Knowing the whispers about Meghan's secrecy were growing louder. How much pressure can one man take? And then consider Meghan's perspective. Maybe she felt the monarchy didn't deserve access to her baby. Maybe she wanted to protect Archie from the same circus that consumed Diana. Maybe her secrecy was born from love, not deception. That's the contradiction, isn't it? Every choice she made can be read two ways, as protection or as concealment. But here's where it gets chilling. After that fight, after Meghan's words about Archie's paternity, Harry couldn't help but revisit those early days. The secrecy, the contradictions, the rumors, the missing details. What once seemed like harmless privacy now looked like evidence. Evidence that maybe Meghan wasn't lying. Let me ask you, if your partner told you you weren't the parent of your child, wouldn't you start re-examining every memory, every inconsistency, every gap in the story? That's exactly what Harry did. He replayed Archie's birth in his mind, piece by piece, searching for the truth. And the more he thought about it, the less sense it made. The timeline, the secrecy, the staged photos, the edited birth certificate. None of it fit. And then came the cliffhanger. Because if Archie's birth was wrapped in questions, what about Lilibet's? Harry would soon discover that his daughter's arrival carried even bigger mysteries. What's more joyful than the birth of a child? For Harry and Meghan, the arrival of their daughter, Lilibet Diana, in June 2021 should have been a moment of healing. A chance to celebrate new life, honor Diana's memory, and present a symbol of hope for the future. But instead, her birth triggered a storm of questions, some louder, some darker, and some that Harry could no longer ignore. So let me ask you, why did Lilibet's birth feel less like a celebration and more like a mystery? Let's set the scene. Meghan gave birth in Santa Barbara, far from the prying eyes of the British press. It was meant to be private, serene, the opposite of the suffocating spectacle they had fled in London. No golden easel, no royal photographers, no palace announcements. Just a carefully crafted press release that told the world only what Meghan and Harry wanted them to know. At first glance, it looked like a victory for freedom. Harry and Meghan had broken away from tradition, set their own rules, and shielded their daughter from the chaos of royal expectations. But behind the scenes, whispers began to swirl. The first red flag, timing. Meghan and Harry announced Lilibet's birth 2 days after the fact. 2 days. In the world of royals, that's unusual. Births are typically announced within hours, if not minutes. Why wait? Was it simply for privacy, or because something had to be managed? The second red flag, the name. Lilibet wasn't just any name. It was Queen Elizabeth's private childhood nickname, a term of endearment used only by her closest family members. Choosing it seemed bold, almost provocative, especially considering Harry and Meghan's fractured relationship with the monarchy at the time. To their supporters, it was a loving tribute. To their critics, it was audacious, a way of tethering their daughter to the throne despite walking away from royal duties. But for Harry, the whispers weren't about names. They were about DNA. Think back to Meghan's words during that fight. You're not the father of Archie and Lilibet. At first, Harry obsessed over Archie. But when Lilibet was born, those words echoed in his mind like a curse. What if it wasn't just a cruel line? What if it was a confession? And here's where things get strange. According to insiders, Harry allegedly asked for proof, DNA proof. He wanted confirmation that Lilibet was truly his. That request reportedly set off another round of explosive arguments with Meghan. She was furious, insulted, outraged that he could even question her fidelity. Remember the whispers that haunted his own childhood, that James Hewitt, not Prince Charles, was his real father? The gossip about red hair, the alleged timeline, the scandal that refused to die? Harry grew up surrounded by doubt about his own parentage. And now, history seemed to be repeating itself, except this time, he was the one demanding answers. Let me ask you, if you grew up being told you might not be your father's son, wouldn't you cling desperately to certainty with your own children? Wouldn't you need proof? And the proof Harry wanted was simple, a DNA test. But Meghan, according to whispers, resisted. She allegedly told Harry that asking for a test was a betrayal, that it meant he didn't trust her, that it was an insult not just to her, but to their children. And so, the cycle deepened. Harry needed certainty, Meghan demanded trust. Neither budged. Here's the contradiction that gnawed at Harry. Meghan insisted on privacy, control, secrecy. But secrecy was exactly what fueled suspicion. If she truly had nothing to hide, why not just take the test? Why fight so hard against it? The situation only grew messier when details about Lilibet's christening emerged. Traditionally, royal babies are christened with the Archbishop of Canterbury, in a ceremony steeped in centuries of ritual. But Lilibet's baptism was private, reportedly held in California, away from royal oversight. Again, Meghan and Harry claimed it was about independence. But to skeptics, it looked like another way to avoid scrutiny. And then came the most chilling rumor of all. Some insiders whispered that Harry, in a desperate moment, confided in a close friend, "I need to know the truth. I can't live like this." Whether he ever followed through with a DNA test remains uncertain. But the fact that he considered it reveals how deeply Meghan's words had scarred him. Now, let's dig into the emotional weight of this. Imagine Harry looking down at his daughter. She has his eyes. Or does she? She has Meghan's smile. Or is that just wishful thinking? Every feature becomes a question mark. Every resemblance, a test. That's not parenthood. That's torture. But let's flip the perspective for a moment. Imagine being Meghan. You've carried a child, given birth, endured media abuse, and now your husband, the man who vowed to protect you, demands proof that you're telling the truth. Wouldn't you snap? Wouldn't you feel betrayed? Maybe Meghan's fury wasn't about hiding something at all. Maybe it was about being pushed to the breaking point by a man who should have trusted her. And yet, the contradictions remain. Because when the world looked at Meghan and Harry after Lilibet's birth, they saw smiles, happiness, a picture-perfect family of four. But behind closed doors, doubt was eating away at Harry like acid. And once that kind of doubt creeps into a marriage, it doesn't go away. It grows. Here's a surprising fact. Lilibet still has not been photographed publicly with the Queen, despite being named after her. Some say it's because of strained family relations. Others suggest it's because Meghan and Harry wanted to control every image of their children. But to conspiracy theorists, it was evidence that something about Lilibet had to be kept hidden. And so, the whispers grew louder. DNA, paternity, secrets. But here's where the story takes its darkest turn. Because Harry, tormented by doubt, didn't just question Meghan, he began quietly investigating. Looking for inconsistencies, asking questions, checking timelines. And in his search, he allegedly found something that terrified him. A clue, a detail so small it might have been missed. But to Harry, it was proof that Meghan was hiding more than he ever imagined. What was it? A date? A message? A face from the past? No one knows for sure. But one thing is certain. From that moment on, Harry could no longer see his marriage or his children the same way again. And what he uncovered next would make Meghan's late-night words feel less like a threat and more like the truth. Have you ever had an argument so explosive that when it ended, you realized nothing would ever be the same again? That's what happened to Harry and Meghan. Their marriage had weathered countless storms, media attacks, family feuds, public backlash. But this fight? This was different. This was the night where love collided with rage, and trust was shattered in a way that could never be glued back together. And it all started with one question. Harry's voice was low, almost trembling. "Meghan, I need to know, are Archie and Lilibet really mine?" Silence. For a moment, Meghan didn't respond. She just stared at him, stunned. Maybe it was disbelief. Maybe it was rage boiling under the surface. Maybe it was calculation, deciding how to play her next move. Finally, she laughed. But it wasn't a warm laugh. It was cold, sharp, bitter. "I can't believe you'd even ask me that." But Harry wasn't laughing. His face was pale, his hands clenched, his eyes burning with suspicion. This wasn't a joke. He wanted an answer. "Let me ask you, what's worse, being lied to or not knowing whether you're being lied to?" That's the torment Harry was trapped in. The fight spiraled quickly. Meghan accused him of being paranoid, of letting the tabloids poison his mind. Harry shot back that he wasn't paranoid. He was observant. He brought up the secrecy around Archie's birth, the edited birth certificate, the delays in announcing Lilibet's arrival, the private baptism. Every detail Meghan had brushed off as privacy, Harry now wielded as evidence. And then came the spark that lit the powder keg. Harry demanded a DNA test. Not a conversation. Not reassurance. Cold, hard proof. Meghan exploded. She shouted that no woman should ever have to prove her children's paternity to her own husband. That his demand wasn't about love. It was about control, about insecurity, about his unresolved trauma. But Harry wouldn't back down. "Then why won't you just do it? If there's nothing to hide, why fight me?" That was the line that broke her. Her voice dropped, icy and deliberate. "Because if you need a piece of paper to believe me, then you've already decided I'm guilty." Boom. The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. And here's where the emotional spiral kicked in. Harry wasn't just questioning Meghan anymore. He was questioning everything. Their love story, their marriage, their children, his own identity as a father. And Meghan? She wasn't just defending herself. She was attacking back. She dredged up his past, his anger issues, his drinking, his inability to let go of Diana's death. She threw his deepest insecurities in his face, line after line. It wasn't a fight. It was war. Let me pause and ask you something. Have you ever noticed how the worst fights aren't about one thing? They're about everything? A single argument opens the floodgates, and years of resentment come pouring out. That's what happened here. Harry accused Meghan of manipulation, of playing victim, of using his love as a weapon. Meghan accused Harry of weakness, of obsession, of being so blinded by his trauma that he couldn't see the truth in front of him. The fight escalated until Meghan hurled the words that would haunt Harry forever. "You're not the father of Archie and Lilibet." This time, it wasn't said in the heat of the moment. It was said with intent. Calm. Precise. Like a knife slid between his ribs. Harry froze. His entire world tilted. Was she admitting it? Or was she just trying to destroy him? He couldn't tell. And that uncertainty, that inability to know, was the most painful cut of all. Here's the contradiction. Meghan could have backtracked. She could have clarified, softened, explained. But she didn't. She let the words hang in the air. And by doing so, she left Harry trapped in a prison of doubt. And that's when something snapped in him. For the first time in their marriage, Harry raised his voice in a way that scared even him. His hands slammed on the table, rattling glasses. "Don't you dare play with me, Meghan. Don't you dare." Meghan didn't flinch. Her eyes were steady, cold, almost defiant. "Then what are you going to do about it?" It was a challenge, a dare, a line in the sand. And that's when Harry realized the truth. This wasn't just about paternity. This was about power. Every relationship has a balance of power. And that night, Meghan was reminding Harry that she held it. Whether her words were true or false, she had the ability to destroy him with a sentence. And Harry knew it. The fight ended not with resolution, but with silence. Harry stormed out. Meghan stayed behind, unshaken, almost victorious. But victory in what? A marriage isn't supposed to be a battlefield. Yet that night, theirs became one. Here's the emotional punch. Fights like this don't end when the shouting stops. They linger. They fester. They poison every glance, every touch, every word that follows. And from that night on, Harry couldn't look at his wife or his children without hearing her voice in his head. "You're not the father." And the torment only deepened when Harry stumbled across something shocking in the days that followed. Because tucked away, hidden in Meghan's phone, was a message. A message from someone Harry didn't recognize. Intimate, familiar, cryptic. And that message would lead Harry down a rabbit hole of suspicion that he couldn't climb out of. What did the message say? Who was it from? That's the cliffhanger. And the answer would unravel the last shreds of trust holding Harry and Meghan together. What's the worst thing you could find on your partner's phone? A A cryptic message. A strange name. Something that makes your stomach drop and your mind race. That's exactly what happened to Harry. So let me ask you, would you rather know the truth, no matter how painful, or live with comforting lies? After the fight, after Meghan's cold words about Archie and Lilibet, Harry couldn't sleep. His mind was a storm. He needed proof, anything to confirm or deny the doubts gnawing at him. And that's when he stumbled across it. A message on Meghan's phone. Short, intimate, and from someone Harry didn't recognize. It read, "I miss our talks. When can we meet again?" Not damning on its own, not explicit. But for Harry, it was enough. Who was this person? Why was Meghan meeting them in secret? Why hadn't she told him? The contradictions piled up. Meghan preached honesty, but here was a hidden connection. She spoke of loyalty, but here was secrecy. She demanded trust, but here was a reason not to trust her. Harry didn't confront her right away. He couldn't. He needed more. He started watching, listening, noticing the calls she took in another room, the texts she answered late at night, the way she shielded her phone when he walked by. Now let's pause here. Have you ever felt suspicion creeping like that? Every detail starts to look suspicious. Every silence feels loaded. Every explanation sounds like a cover-up. That's where Harry was, spiraling deeper into paranoia. But here's the twist. Meghan wasn't exactly hiding. She wasn't sneaking around with guilty panic. She was confident, calm, almost as if she wanted Harry to wonder, as if she wanted him off balance. And this is where the psychological warfare of their marriage became clear. Meghan held the power of ambiguity. Was she unfaithful? Was she innocent? Only she knew. And Harry, trapped in doubt, was powerless. Let me ask you directly. What's worse, catching your partner in a lie, or never knowing if they're lying at all? Harry tried to push the thought aside, but it haunted him. He began connecting dots that may not have been there. A dinner she attended without him. A business call that lasted too long. A message deleted before he could read it. Each one became fuel for his obsession. And here's the emotional twist. Harry didn't just feel betrayed as a husband. He felt betrayed as a father. Because if Meghan was hiding secrets about her own life, what else was she hiding? Could her words about the children have been true after all? The paranoia was unbearable. Harry confided in a friend, admitting, "I don't know who I married anymore." Now, let's flip the perspective. Imagine being Meghan. Maybe the messages were innocent. Maybe the meetings were harmless. Maybe the secrecy was just her way of carving out personal space in a marriage that had become suffocating. After all, Meghan had given up her old life, her career, her freedom. Maybe these little pockets of privacy were her way of holding on to herself. But here's the contradiction. If she had nothing to hide, why hide at all? Why not explain? Why not reassure Harry? Unless, of course, the power of the secret was more useful than the truth. And Meghan knew exactly how much power that gave her. During one particularly heated exchange, she allegedly snapped, "You don't get to know everything, Harry. Not everything is about you." That line hit him like a punch. For Harry, everything was about loyalty, openness, truth. For Meghan, everything was about control. The fight that followed was brutal. Harry demanded to know who she was texting. Meghan refused. Harry accused her of cheating. Meghan accused him of being paranoid. The shouting echoed through the halls of their Montecito home, rattling even the staff who pretended not to listen. And then Meghan dropped another bombshell. "You're not ready for the truth." Chilling words, aren't they? What did she mean? Was she admitting something? Or was she simply twisting the knife? Harry's mind raced. If he wasn't ready for the truth, then what truth was she keeping? Was it about the children? About another man? About her plans for the future? Every possibility was worse than the last. Let me ask you, if your partner looked you in the eye and said, "You're not ready for the truth," would you feel curiosity or fear? Harry felt both. But mostly, he felt powerless. And that's the cruel irony. The prince who once commanded soldiers in Afghanistan, who once stood on the balcony of Buckingham Palace as part of the most powerful family in the world, now stood powerless in his own home, unable to command the truth from the woman he loved. The secrets ate at him. The messages, the meetings, the whispered words, the cold defiance. Meghan had turned his marriage into a riddle with no answer. And Harry, desperate for resolution, could only fall deeper into obsession. And here's where the cliffhanger comes in. Because one night, when Meghan was asleep, Harry made a decision. He would no longer wait for her to tell him the truth. He would find it himself. He reached for her phone, and what he found there would shake him to his core. Have you ever reached a moment where your anger and fear collided so violently that you felt yourself coming apart? That's where Prince Harry found himself. Suspicion had turned into obsession. Doubt had become torment. And now, staring at the glowing screen of Meghan's phone in the dead of night, Harry was seconds away from his breaking point. So let me ask you, what would you do if the truth you were hunting could destroy your family forever? Harry's hands trembled as he scrolled. The messages weren't endless, but they were enough. Enough to plant images in his mind that he couldn't shake. Phrases like, "Wish you were here, don't tell him yet, and we'll talk soon." Innocent? Maybe. But to Harry, they were landmines. Every word another explosion in his chest. He slammed the phone down, his heart racing. He wanted to wake Meghan up, to demand answers right then. But a voice inside him said no. Not yet. Not like this. If he exploded now, he'd lose everything. He needed proof. He needed to be sure. But proof came at a price. From that moment, Harry became a man possessed. Friends noticed his temper worsening. His staff whispered about sudden outbursts. Small things, misplaced keys, a late email, would send him into rages that shocked those around him. This wasn't the charming, cheeky prince they remembered. This was someone unraveling. And yet, behind the anger was pain. Pure, unfiltered pain. Because every time Harry looked at his children, he saw question marks. Archie's laugh, was it his? Lilibet's smile, was it Meghan's alone? He loved them fiercely, but love and doubt are uneasy bedfellows. Each bedtime story became a test. Each hug became a reminder of the words Meghan had hurled at him. "You're not the father." Now let's pause here. Betrayal doesn't just wound, it corrodes. It seeps into every corner of your life until nothing feels solid. That's what Harry was living. And when a man feels the ground beneath him start to crumble, he lashes out. The breaking point came one evening after dinner. The children were upstairs, tucked into bed. Harry and Meghan sat in silence, tension thick in the air. Finally, Harry snapped. "I know you're hiding something. I saw the messages." Meghan's fork clattered against her plate. Her face hardened. "You went through my phone?" "Yes," Harry shot back. "And you know why? Because you've given me every reason not to trust you." That's when the fight erupted. Meghan accused Harry of betrayal, of violating her privacy, of letting paranoia destroy their marriage. Harry accused Meghan of manipulation, of keeping secrets, of playing games with the one thing he couldn't bear to lose, his children. The shouting shook the walls. Staff outside the door froze, afraid to move. And then, in a moment of raw fury, Harry slammed his fist into the table so hard the wood cracked. That was it. The breaking point. The moment when fear turned to rage, when the polite mask slipped, when the world saw not a prince, not a husband, but a man on the edge. Meghan didn't flinch. She stood, calm and collected, and said words that would haunt Harry forever. "You think you're breaking me, Harry? No, I'm breaking you. Cold, precise, devastating. Let me ask you, what do you do when the person you love most becomes the person who knows exactly how to destroy you? Do you fight back? Do you run? Or do you crumble?" Harry did all three. He fought with words, he stormed out into the night, and then he crumbled, alone in the darkness, consumed by a storm he couldn't control. But here's the chilling twist. The next morning, Meghan acted as though nothing had happened, smiling at breakfast, playing with the children, carrying on as if the previous night's chaos was a dream. That calmness drove Harry mad. Was she so in control that even his breaking point didn't rattle her? Or was she simply pretending, masking her own fears behind a smile? Either way, Harry couldn't escape the truth. He had crossed a line. The fight wasn't just about words anymore. It was physical, violent in its energy. And once you cross that line, there's no going back. And yet, the torment didn't end there. Because Harry still didn't have answers. He had suspicions, messages, words, but no truth. No certainty. And certainty was the one thing he craved. That's when he made his decision. If Meghan wouldn't give him the truth, he'd find it another way. He'd go behind her back. He'd seek proof, even if it meant betraying her trust. And the path he chose would lead him straight into the darkest chapter of their marriage. Because Harry wasn't just about to test his wife. He was about to test his children. Do you know what spreads faster than truth? Rumor. And when it comes to the royals, rumor isn't just gossip. It's gasoline on a fire that never stops burning. So let me ask you, What happens when private doubts inside a marriage collide with the most ruthless media machine in the world? That's the storm Prince Harry saw on the horizon. Because while he wrestled with his own suspicions, while Meghan guarded her secrets, the press was circling like vultures, hungry for blood. From the very beginning, Harry and Meghan's relationship had been a tabloid goldmine. A prince marrying an American actress? Scandalous. A biracial woman entering the most tradition-bound institution in Britain? Explosive. A couple breaking free from the crown? Headlines for years. But behind all those stories was one question that made even the tabloids hesitate. What if Harry wasn't the father? It had been whispered before, quietly, in corners of the internet. Conspiracy blogs, message boards, speculative podcasts. But mainstream outlets avoided it. Too dangerous. Too personal. Too scandalous even for the British tabloids. But the whispers never died. They grew louder with every contradiction, every secret, every carefully staged photo. And now, with Meghan's own words echoing in Harry's mind, "You're not the father," Harry realized the unthinkable. If those whispers ever hit the front pages, the damage would be catastrophic. Imagine the headlines. Royal paternity scandal. Is Harry really Archie's father? DNA shockwaves in California. The monarchy has survived wars, divorces, abdications. But a paternity scandal this close to the throne? It would be nuclear. Harry knew it. And the press knew it too. Here's the twist. Even before Meghan's fight with Harry, there were already cracks in the wall of secrecy. A journalist from a major UK tabloid had reportedly been tipped off about inconsistencies in Archie's birth record. Another hinted that private investigators in California were sniffing around Meghan's circle. And one source claimed they had a file with enough evidence to spark a global frenzy. Think about it. The Sussexes had fought the press tooth and nail since leaving the UK. Lawsuits, statements, Netflix tell-alls. But in trying to control the narrative, they had only fed the beast. Every time Meghan and Harry tried to shut the door, the press found a window. And this time, the window led straight into the most intimate corner of their lives. Let's pause. Ask yourself this. What would you fear more, being betrayed by your partner or being exposed to the entire world? Harry was staring down the barrel of both. And here's the irony. Meghan, who always insisted on controlling the story, may have been the one holding the match. By throwing those words in Harry's face, she created the very scandal she wanted to avoid. If he broke, if he confided in the wrong person, if he slipped even once, the press would have their story. And they were ready. Reporters had already started drafting speculative pieces. Editors whispered about lines we haven't crossed yet. Photographers were camped outside Montecito, snapping every delivery truck, every doctor's visit, every shadow behind a curtain. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here. Harry felt it. He could hear the thunder in every headline. He could see the lightning in every paparazzi lens. And he knew, once this storm broke, there would be no going back. Here's the emotional punch. Harry wasn't just protecting himself anymore. He was protecting his children. Because if the media ran with the paternity rumors, Archie and Lilibet would grow up under the same shadow he did. The same cruel whispers. The same taunts. The same doubt about who they really were. He couldn't let that happen. He wouldn't. But how do you stop a storm? You can't. You can only prepare. And Harry began preparing. Lawyers on standby. PR teams briefed. Phone calls to allies in the media, begging them not to touch the story. But deep down, he knew it was only a matter of time. Because here's the contradiction. The harder you try to silence a rumor, the louder it becomes. And Meghan? She didn't flinch. She dismissed the idea that the press would ever dare print something so outrageous. She accused Harry of feeding the tabloids with his paranoia. But Harry knew better. He had lived his whole life under their gaze. And he knew that once the press smelled blood, they would never stop. So let me ask you, if you were Harry, would you confess? Would you go public before the press could twist the story? Or would you bury it, praying it never saw the light of day? Harry didn't have an answer. All he had was fear. Fear that the media storm waiting just outside his door was about to blow it off its hinges. Fear that his children's names would be dragged through the mud. Fear that his marriage, already cracking, would collapse completely under the weight of exposure. And that fear drove him to one final, desperate act. Because if the tabloids were coming for him, he needed to know the truth first. And that truth lay sealed in an envelope.